From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the African and Middle East Division of the Library of Congress. Today's lecture on the Discovery of Karamanlidika, Disappearing Literature, Artifacts, and Cultural Heritage by Selenay Aytac and Constantia Constantinou is sponsored by the Near East section of the African and Middle East Division. I'm Joan Weeks, head of the Near East section. On behalf of all my colleagues, and in particular Dr. Mary Jane Deeb, who unfortunately can't be with us today, she's chief of the division, I'd like to welcome you to our very special program today. But before we get started, I always like to give a brief overview of the division, and in the hopes that you'll come back to use our collections for your research. This division is comprised of 3 sections that build and serve our collections to researchers from around the world. We cover 78 countries and more than 35 languages. The Africa section includes all the countries of sub-Saharan Africa. The Hebraic section is responsible for Judaica and Hebraica worldwide. And the Near East section covers all of the Arab countries, including North Africa, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, the Muslims in Western China, Russia, the Balkans, and the peoples of the Caucasus. So you see we encompass a very wide region. After the program, we'd invite you to fill in the evaluation forms that you see on your chairs, if you could kindly do that. We like to see how we're doing with our programs. And also, we have a little brochure about our Four Corners blog posts. We like to promote those to enhance the ability for researchers around the world to know what we have here in our collections. And also, I'd just quickly remind you that our program today is being videotaped, so if you ask questions, just implicitly you're giving your permission. So please don't hesitate, but just to be aware that that is being recorded. So now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Dr. Selenay Aytac is Associate Professor at Long Island University and a Fulbright Scholar. She just finished her Fulbright Scholarship, so that's quite an accomplishment. She conducted her doctoral research in the field of bibliometrics. That's a very esoteric field, to say the least. And she studied scholarly communication and the behavior of Turkish scientists. She's also interested in user studies, particularly serving diverse student groups such as international students in academic libraries. And Dr. Constantia Constantinou is Dean of University Libraries at Stony Brook University in New York, and also a Fulbright Scholar. And she's published and presented her research on topics ranging from organizational performance, information literacy, information systems, library technology, digital preservation, scholarly communication. So you can see she's had a wide range of interests. And she's an established public speaker. She's been invited to present her research at library conferences in the United States and worldwide, including China, Cyprus, Finland, France, Greece, Turkey, Korea, Russia, Ukraine, Croatia, Hong Kong, Spain, it goes on. So Constantina is also co-editor of the book International Librarianship, Developing Professional, Intercultural, and Educational Leadership. Please help me welcome Drs. Aytac and Constantinou to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to be here. Thank you for your hospitality and for the great honor to invite us to the Library of Congress, the Division of Africa and Middle Eastern Division to present our research. My name is Constantia, and I'm delighted to be here with my colleague, Selenay, that we met accidentally when I was finishing my Fulbright coming from Cyprus, and she was getting ready to go to Turkey to start her Fulbright on the same research topic that we both had fallen in love with. Our research topic is on the discovery of Karamanlidika. To paraphrase a scholar by the name of Matthias Kapler from his book, Tale of Two Languages, Tracing the History of Turkish and Greek Language, no society is purely monolingual, and no human expression of art or communication is monocultural. And this is what Selenay and I came to discover in our respective countries and cultures. The outline of our presentation will talk about the origins of Karamanlidika, Karamanlidika terminology, our Fulbright projects, and what brought us into this kind of research, the people of Cyprus as have been divided and reunited in their own cultures, the Karamanlidika digital library that Selenay's project is addressing, and some recommendations that we came from our research. The origins of Karamanlidika and Karamanlides and the Karamanli people is starting from 1071, when Turks began to settle in Anatolia, and the indigenous population of Anatolia spoke and wrote Greek, and they were Greek Orthodox. But nevertheless, Turks did not call them Greek, but they followed the Arab tradition of calling them Rum, which meant Romans. And among this community, there was a group of Turkish who wrote in Greek alphabet. They lived in places in Anatolia such as the Karaman region, Konya, Mersin, Silivke, Kayseri, Yozgat, Ankara, and later, because of trade and economy, some of them settled in the cities such as Trabzon, Izmir, and Istanbul. This shaded map shows the area of Karaman in relation to Turkey, Greece, Cyprus, and Middle East. And the next map gives us a better, historical map, a better understanding where the region is by name and shading of colors. The Karaman region is the Greek region right in the middle of Anatolia above Cyprus. Now, there are two theories about the Karamanlides. Karamanlides were descended from religiously converted Turkish soldiers, the Turkobols, that Byzantine emperors settled in Anatolia. And another theory that seems to be a little bit more convincing is that the Karamanlides are the direct descendants of Byzantine Greeks. Despite their linguistic Turkification, they maintain their Greek Orthodox faith, and we find some of those elements from 19th century linguists who traveled throughout the Karamanli-speaking regions of Cappadocia and documented few of the remaining Greek words that were mostly the elderly people spoke. Karamanlides did not adopt the Greek national identity of the time, but they prefer instead to be called Rom, the Romans, Christians of Christian Anatolia.
Karamanlides is one of the many interesting communities in need of the creation of a niche personal community knowledge environment as an archetype for similar conceptualization. If we summarize what Constantia just briefly mentioned, Karamanlides, also known as Karamanli people, are those who spoke Ottoman Turkish and wrote in Greek characters in Asia Minor during the rule of the Ottoman Empire. Karamanlı Turkish community has been forced to leave the country in accord with the 1923 Mubadele, Lausanne. So there is no more Karamanlı community left in Turkey anymore. And the cultural artifacts, all the Karamanlides artifacts scattered over the World Wide Web, are the only evidence of their existence. If we just look into the language discourse again, Karamanlı Turkish is spoken Ottoman Turkish and written Greek. If we just go into Ottoman Turkish case, we see Ottoman Turkish and Arabic alphabets. And for Greek is Greek spoken and Greek written. So for the case of Karamanlı Turkish, we see the combination of a little bit change Greek alphabets, manipulated just to give some of the sounds that Ottoman Turkish has, and spoken purely Ottoman Turkish. And if we refer the same scientist again, the same scholar, Matthias Kapler, he pointed out that no individual is perfectly monolingual, no society is purely monocultural, and no human expression of arts or any type of communication is free from any external influence. So works that were published in Ottoman Turkish using Greek script are called Karamanlidika, or Karamanlı Turkish, is the great example of what scholar Kapler mentioned, discussed in his works. And works that's published in Ottoman Turkish using Greek scripts are the great example of this cross-cultural concern, and it is exchanging between two cultures. And if I go back to my digital library projects, we see that the aim of the project was the discovery of Karamanlides artifacts. But not just discovery of these artifacts, but also the reconnecting of people to their cultural heritage and their lost memories via a digital platform, a digital library. And it was not just a digital library project to start with. One of the aims, objectives of this project was to facilitate, in the long term of course, a genealogy research among these dispersed people and common understanding of cultural heritage, common cities, and shared countries such as Cyprus, country that remains divided between Greek and Turkish Cypriots. My methodology, the first step was to identify available digital Karamanlides cultural artifacts via social media tools. So I use Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and I use some keywords to retrieve some Karamanlides and pinpoint the useful metadata for such a project. And the next step focused on the analysis of these user-created, generated metadata. And based on the findings of this study, we found many Karamanlidika artifacts scattered all over the World Wide Web, and most of them lacking descriptive metadata. Now I have a schema here. You can see some of the artifacts listed. 2 artifacts retrieved via Twitter, and 3 of them from Facebook, and 2 from YouTube. The first one is a book title page of a book, a monograph, found in Twitter by using the keyword Karamanlidika. And the date is clearly visible. The date was 1784. And of course, not so much information on this Twitter tweets. There is no information about location, and there is no translation. But in some cases, you see that there is a transliteration of Karamanlidika here. And the second artifact I gathered via Twitter was a an inscripted stone entry of the building. And of course, we didn't have the date or any information about this. It was just a picture of an inscripted stone with Karamanlidika on it. And some other data gathered from Facebook discussion groups. Facebook is a great platform that many people, they get together and they join to these groups and they discuss the different images and different surrogates. They talk about the language, they transliterate, and they discuss about the resources they upload on these Facebook groups. This one was also from Cyprus, Güzelyurt. The person who took the picture of this inscripted stone entry of the house put the place that it's taken at Cyprus. And the dates, we guess it's from 1900s. And this individual used the tags Karamanice and Karamanlılar. These are two popular tags used among Turkish researchers, Turkish historians. They use these Turkish tags. And the next one was a photograph, again found through these Facebook discussion groups. And they used the tags Karamanlidika and Karamanlide, so it was easier to retrieve this one with the common keywords we use. And it was the picture of an orphanage from Cappadocia. It's Zincirlere, the current region. And it was suspected that the date is 1911 or 12. And we found another picture from Kayseri that we see a family picture, five people all together. And it's also dated 1924. And a relative posted this picture. It's their family photographs. And they post their picture and they point that it's their family members. And they look forward if anybody else knows the other relatives or neighbors, information about them. And also, we use YouTube to find some other artifacts. And we found one oral interview and one song. And oral interview conducted in 2013. And she remembers how her relatives came from Turkey and how they spoke and how they sang and all the information about the homeland and the village they live. So she had all this information in this oral interview. And she also had some of the artifacts remain from her grandmother that they brought together, some of the cooking utensils, some other kitchen stuff. So these are two great pieces that we gathered from YouTube. And if we go back to the digital library prototype we presented, we see a 4-layer system. And the first one, we see the content metadata. And the second one is system and network, users, and management and policy. In the content metadata area, we propose that with this digital library, users can upload all the artifacts they house in their family archives or any other photographs they taken in these unique villages. And they can just upload those. And they can also annotate the information about these Karamanlides artifacts. And this proposed system will store and will also help to retrieve all these artifacts and by using control vocabulary. And in terms of users, users are wearing multiple hats. They are not just users. They are also uploading their family archives, their personal archives about Karamanlidika. And in the meantime, they are annotating, they are sharing their information about these pieces and communicating with other users and researchers. And this proposed digital library will also have some guidelines and it's hoped that will also house monthly exhibitions that anyone can come visit this digital library and see monthly uploaded Karamanlidika artifacts, and they can see them. So I just have an example of an entity relationship diagram here. You see the Karamanlidika is the most popular keyword, but in some cases, like in that uploaded Facebook picture, they may use Karamanice, they may use Karamanli, they may use Karamanlilar, but of course we will use this authoritative entry Karamanlidika and Karamanlides for these resources. Libraries, archives, and museums and other memory institutions were the primary keepers of cultural artifacts before the invention of the World Wide Web, especially Web 2.0. With the emergence of social media, everything's radically changed and enhanced, and the public, they start to disseminate their cultural heritage directly, and therefore they bypass the memory institution. So such a digital library project may be a good venue, environment that they can share all the cultural artifacts they have. So it's also hoped that this proposed digital library with the project will be also a cultural glue that creates bonds and cultural knowledge frame for a cohesive Karamanlides community in this distributed environment. And it's hoped that this will also facilitate genealogy research among these dispersed people and common understanding of cultural heritage, common stays, and share countries such as Cyprus, as we mentioned previously. And it's also hoped that Karamanlides will be a good example, this digital library will be a good example to some other communities which is in similar need for creation of a digital library. So we talk about all these cultural artifacts and families and researchers holding these resources in their personal archives. And how about the Karamanlidika monographs? They are also dispersed all over the world, and they are housed in a variety of libraries and repositories. And I have some example here. That's one of the Karamanlidika books. This is a famous song. It reads as Yeni Sevdalı Şarkı on the top, and at the bottom, the lyrics of a very famous Turkish song. Probably you heard about Recep'im şarkısı. I was wondering, any of you heard about Recep'im şarkısı? It reads as gemilerde talim var, talim var. Bahriyeli yarim var, yarim var. O da gitti sefere, ne talihsiz başım var. Hadi benim Recep'im, Recep'im. So this is the first part of this famous song. So this is from the Yeni Sevdalı Şarkı, an example of how Karamanlidika was in those monographs. And I have another example of this special culture here. This is the Hakiki Singer. When you read, you see that this is the special documentation of this special sewing machine purchased by a Karamanlides family. And you see that this is coming from Merkezi Umumi. It's Hakiki Singer, and all the details about this particular purchase done by this family. And I have another example, the entrance of this monograph. On the top, you see the Karamanlidika entrance, and you see the transliteration at the bottom. And when you read, when you transliterate, so this is something similar we would like to do in the digital library. Whenever we upload a Karamanlidika document, we would like to see the transliteration, so anyone can read and understand the content or description of the artifact. We have Hristiyan Asakiri Osmaniyesine mahsus Talimi Ahlak Risalesi. Musannifi Leonidos. Allah'a iman, vatana sadakat, padişaha ubudiyet, kanuna itaat. Dersaadet Patrikhane Matbaası 1911.
In 2010, I returned to Cyprus for my second Fulbright, and my objective then was to bring these two bi-communal societies of the Turkish and the Greek Cypriots closer to each other in understanding each other's language from the library's perspective. Cyprus had always since 1960s had a UN presence, as you see in some of these pictures, but the communities lived together until 1974, when there was a division of the island. My work with the librarians from the Cypriot Turkish universities and the Greek Turkish universities that you see in these pictures was very collaborative, was very trusting, was very engaging until the two communities came together to begin to realize the commonalities of their cultures, their language in some respects, as well as their professions, librarianship. Trust was built to the point where we opened each other's special collections to discover in those collections the Karamanlidika book that I was seeing for the first time. Some examples of those books are here from their special collections, and for me to realize for the first time these two cultures coming together in sounding Turkish Ottoman words with the Greek spelling of the titles and the text of the books. Some of the elements of the Karamanlidika book is, of course, the special dots that you see over the Greek letters to indicate the Turkish pronunciation of those words. And of course, Arabic calligraphy, such as the Tura of the Sultans sealed on the books. This particular book, it was published in Istanbul, in, I think in 1877 by an Armenian publisher. So we see more than just one culture or identity come together. There is the Arabic script and the Greek and Turkish pronunciations of these books. Now, my colleague will talk a little bit more about how we would like to see these books depicted into our catalogs and our ability to discover them through our systems.
So some of these monographs are housed in our libraries. We search WorldCats and we analyze bibliographic descriptions of some of these Karamanli works or the manifestations of Karamanlidika. So we found Karamanlidika surrogate records for Karamanlidika works in these libraries. And we examined some of those marked records and would like to share our recommendations. One of the university libraries, Boğaziçi University Library from Istanbul, Turkey, where I had my Fulbright research conducted, is a good place for many Karamanlidika resources. And this is one of the Karamanlidika works that you can see the bibliographic records. And you see the title. This is the Çingene Kızı. And they transliterate the title, and they put the, as you see, the publishing information. But the only information in the surrogate records indicates that this is a Karamanlidika work, is the subject heading 650 field here. It's Turkish language and Karamanlı. And this is how it describes. So if you're looking for Karamanlidika in WorldCat, you will not able to retrieve this bibliographic record, nor you will able to know that Boğaziçi University Library has a great collection of Karamanlidika monographs. Another example is from Library of Congress, and this is the newer edition of a Karamanlidika work, Temaşa-i Dünya ve Cefaker u Cefakeş. it's a well-known work. It's first published in Karamanlidika, but then later on in 1986 they republished, and here you see that there is a title information in notes area. We see that Roman transcription of the original Turkish in Greek script published as Temaşa-i Dünya Cefaker Cefakeş, Istanbul. So we see the date of the original work. But, and look at the subject headings. We see Turkish civilization, 19th century in 651 mark field, but we don't see anything about Karamanlidika or Karamanlides. Usually, when you're looking for Karamanlidika monographs, you look for the keyword Karamanlidika. So here again, we don't have any indication of this mostly used keywords in the record, nor a subject heading. Another surrogate record is from British Library, and this is also another Karamanlidika work. In 245 we see Hazreti Havramen, Ziyade-i çok cana menfaatle kurban çekesi. So we see that this is also published in Constantinople in 1836, and we have some notes field information. Again, information about the language Karamanlidi Turkish. So this is how they describe in the notes area. Karamanlidi Turkish, written in Greek letters, romanized in the normal way. And there is no subject heading, so we really don't see that any information about the genre of this particular work either. So our findings that results show that published works representing of the Karamanli literature are dispersed all over the world in a variety of libraries and repositories. However, due to lack of subject headings and Library of Congress call numbers, because some of these resources are classified and housed in Turkish language section, some of them in modern Greek language section, and some of them are just waiting to be cataloged. So due to lack of subject headings and Library of Congress call numbers, retrieving these works are very problematic. And there is no specific bibliographic description used for any of these Karamanli works. In most of the aforementioned library catalogs, as you saw the surrogate records, they only use the notes area. So our recommendation for our colleagues at Library of Congress, LC subject heading, call number, and perhaps the language code, we didn't mention that, but usually they use the TU language code for Turkish for all these Karamanlidika works. In some cases they use the Greek code, so it should be established a new one for Karamanlidika. And if I just summarize, by creating a new subject heading for Karamanlidika or Karamanlides, we can organize all these monographs under one subject heading, and we can make all the researchers access much easier to the Karamanlidika works.
And we would like to conclude our presentation with this image and a sound bite of a song. These are Karamanlides. As you see, they're all gathered together with their instruments, their Turkish flags, and they're singing the Karamanli song. Let me see if I can get to this. Great. So today we spoke of Karamanlides people, their culture, their language, and their literature as we have come to experience that from our research. Our Fulbright assignments presented the diversity and the commonalities of these two distinct cultures, and the Turkish and the Greek cultures. And we believe that it's our responsibility to preserve their cultures, their records, and to make them discoverable through standardization of subject headings and descriptors. Thank you.
So we'd be happy to have some questions from anybody. Does people have questions? Michael?
I'm a cataloger of rivers and languages here. One of my colleagues
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Michael, thank you again. Can you just tell us a little bit about the Armenian Turkish literature? I'm not very much familiar with that.
I'm not the one who's cataloging
Okay.
it, but the Armenian cataloger does not know Turkish, so when he gets the book in Armenian script and starts reading it, he realizes that it's not Armenian. He brings it to us. He usually brings it to Alan, and together they figure out what it says. But we've also gotten a couple of books in Kurdish in the Armenian script, particularly translations of the Bible. And I often wonder who was intended as the audience of that. I mean, who would only know the Armenian alphabet but speak Kurdish in 1875? It's a bit of a mystery to me who was the intended audience for something like that.
And that was my experience too when I was working with the rare book collections of my Turkish Cypriot libraries, and my colleagues presented me with those books and said, here, you speak Greek, you understand Greek, you could read what it said. And I started reading it, and I was listening to my Turkish pronunciation of Allah, the great God, and I did not understand a word I was reading, but they understood everything, of course.
Well, but it was known with the Karamanlidika, it was known that they spoke Turkish, but wrote it in the Arabic, in the Greek script.
Yes.
But I know of no Kurds who spoke Kurdish but wrote it in the Armenian script. So it's an even smaller.
Yes.
We have any other question?
Location-wise, as far as people who have survived, who still speak, where are the largest communities? I realize they're not in Turkey anymore, but where would they be located?
I met some of the children and grandchildren of Karamanlidis in the United States. Yeah.
Not Greece or Cyprus or the Balkans?
Yes, some of the oral interviews conducted, it was in Greece, and after the Mubadele, they went to Greece and different places, and some of them they came to the United States. This is how I think she met some of the grandchildren, and so they dispersed all over the world. And I'm also a member of this Facebook group. It's called Scattered Greeks, that they talk about their great-great-parents and their families, and they try to learn more about their transcendental homelands that they never been there, but the only image in their head is through their grandma's stories. So they talk about these places, and they know the villages that they born, but they never been to Turkey either. So just like this summer, we met some of the researchers from Australia and New Zealand. They were planning to come to Turkey to see the land that some of their great-parents they mentioned, and they talk about the Gallipoli. And so I think they're all over the world. I also met some Australian Greeks that they are looking some information about their family roots in Anatolia. So I think they're all over the world.
I'm just fascinated with your digital library project and see how you're using transliteration schemes. This is one of the most difficult things with putting together a digital library with different scripts. We're only beginning to be able to put things in Arabic, Chinese, Greek, we call them the Jacti languages, and I think we're not there with Greek yet.
Yes.
In the cataloging process. So could you describe some of your efforts to put things into this digital library?
Yes, this is just in the preparation stage yet, and of course we cannot propose an automated system because it's such a special language and requires a special skill of transliteration. As you all appreciate that you need two experts, just like in the case of Armenian characters and Turkish, you need both knowledge of Armenian letters, knowledge of Ottoman Turkish, not the regular Turkish, because the Turkish they speak right now currently is also different. They had the language revolution. A lot of words have been left behind. So you really need someone who can speak the Turkish of that time that they created these works. So you need multiple language expertise. So it is almost impossible to create such an automated system. So the proposed library will have users wearing multiple hats as transliterator and uploading the images of Karamanlidika works and then transliterating by themselves in the system with the help of some other users. So this is the plan for the system, and it's still in the process of working. We have any other question? Comments?
I'm fascinated with the idea of your digital library also. Do you have, are you going to be needing funding for it? How's it going to start?
Well, I received a Fulbright to go to country, Turkey, and organize some workshops and meet the specialists and librarians. And at the first stage, we had the proposal of the digital library and the architecture of the digital library, but we didn't complete any technical work yet. So, and the Boğaziçi University was a great host, and they hosted me, and I spent there my Fulbright research, and they had two scholars, researchers. They helped me to put the web page together just to disseminate the information, because you can surprise that there are so many people out there, they never heard of Karamanlidika. They don't know about these hidden gems of literature. I mean, we know about Turkish literature, Ottoman literature, Greek, Armenian, but we don't know about these works created in between those different cultures. So the first stage was to really disseminate what we're planning to do and gather support. So the technical part did not start yet, and the plan is, if everything goes well with the university and the staff, to apply for a grant so we can hire people to put the system together so we can start uploading some family archives. Because I'm also a Facebook member of some of these groups that they have huge documentation in their own houses and they don't know how to share. I mean, we all using Facebook, we post a lot of things. It just disappears in Facebook. The major problem in Facebook in terms of sharing, it's not really retrievable. And if you cannot retrieve what is in there, as you know, the main objective of a library catalog should be retrievable. So Facebook is not the best place to share those type of resources. So all those people, they're ready to share what they have at somewhere else on a better platform. So hopefully once we have the funding and put the technical system digital library out there, we will have many people supporting the creation of this library.
We also came to know a lot of scholars, Greeks and Turks, through a conference that they hosted for the second time, and there's a publication of their essays called Cries and Whispers of Karamanlidika. There were about 50-some scholars who continue to do this kind of work, and I think reading their essays in that conference was extremely eye-opening for both of us to realize that there is some true scholarship there, that we need to capture the history behind it.
Thank you so much, both of you, Constantia.
Thank you. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.